Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will be back in the House of Commons next month, this time as the representative for the Alberta riding of Battle River Crowfoot. In his victory speech, Poilievre said things may sound different.
Conservatives have our work cut out for us. This fall, as Parliament returns, we will not only oppose out-of-control Liberal inflation, crime, immigration, cost of living, and housing prices, but we will propose real solutions for safe streets, secure borders, a stronger and sovereign country with bigger take-home pay for our people.
After last night's by-election win, Poilievre can shift gears to the return of Parliament, where he'll face off against Prime Minister Mark Carney for the first time as members of Parliament. For more on what that will look like, I'm joined by Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, Melissa Lantsman. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Can voters expect a different style of leadership when Poilievre returns to the House next month?
Look, I think that voters are going to expect that an official opposition in this country holds the government to account on, on the things that that they said that they were going to do and are not getting done, as well as propose solutions for Canadians to see that the Conservatives are a government in waiting, and we're happy to have Pierre Poilievre back in the House to do that as our leader, united behind him with a bigger caucus and a very different Conservative coalition than we've had in the past.
Well, in his victory speech last night, he did talk about proposing solutions, about being willing to work with other parties. Well, does that shift include a shift in tone?
Well, look, I think that the proposals for some of what we said that we would do had we won the election, Mark Carney agreed with, and he took some of those things. And there are plenty more. You've heard from Conservatives. We're going to stand strong against the anti-energy laws that exist on the books, C-69, that stop pipelines and mines from being built. We're going to oppose the industrial carbon tax, things that are going to make us more self-sufficient, less reliant. There's no shortage of things to talk about in Parliament. We've got an insane EV mandate, and all of the things that were wrong, on the day of the election and before the election, out of control housing prices, unchecked immigration, a cost of living crisis, labor strife that we haven't seen in the last 30 years in this country. Those things are still there. So again, no shortage of things to talk about in Parliament when Parliament returns, and we're happy to have Pierre at the helm of that, squaring off with the Prime Minister.
You mentioned a whole host of proposals in there, and I want to get to that in a moment, but I guess some of those are wrapped up in this Canadian Sovereignty Act that you want to put forward, and some of those are promises that I guess essentially, if you look at the results, were rejected in the spring election. So how do you move forward with proposals that that you actually want to get stolen if we're talking about ideas getting poached by the government?
We're very happy to see the Liberals take on conservative policies. I don't think that's a repudiation of policy at all. Look, I think that Canadians know that we are in a difficult situation when it comes to trade, when it comes to housing, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to young people trying to get into the workforce with high unemployment rates, when it comes to strikes and fair pay for work. These are the things that Conservatives will propose. We need to reward investment in this country, keep it within our borders. Things like a reinvestment tax credit or dropping the capital gains if you're going to reinvest that cash in Canada to bolster our industry, our communities, our families, and our workers.
So much of the success until the election of your party and your leader was in opposing the Trudeau government and the things that they were doing. Now we're talking about proposing. How do you ensure that Canadians give the Conservative Party credit if the Liberals do adopt some of your ideas going forward, if now it's about proposing and not opposing so much?
Well, look, I think it's still about, it's certainly still about both. There's an official opposition in this country, whether people like it or not, and it's a function of democracy. But let's not forget that we've built a coalition that Conservatives have never built before, or have never enjoyed before. Unions, trade workers, young people, new Canadians, people who have never voted before, 41% and 8 million Canadians. We have the responsibility to speak on behalf of those 8 million Canadians that chose the Conservative vision going forward, and we've got to find ways to expand that coalition. So I think opposing has certainly a function, and expanding that base and that Conservative coalition to include more and more Canadians who are going to see the path to prosperity with our party and with Pierre as the next Prime Minister of Canada. That's what we're there to do. We're happy that he's back with the by-election behind us. We can look forward to Parliament and again growing that Conservative coalition in a way that we haven't before.
I hear what you're saying, but polling did show that, for example, on the consumer carbon tax, most Canadians gave Mark Carney credit for cutting that, even if they know in the background that for 2 years it was something that you have pushed for. Is there not a risk of that continuing to happen if, let's say, for example, EV mandates, that might be one of the more possible ideas that you could see a government adopting, because industry is also pushing for those to be dropped? Would it bother you if the Liberals get credit for that?
Gone, and for a long time in this country, there are many, many voices, including on your very show, that said that inflation had nothing to do with the carbon tax. And even today, we see a lower inflation number because of getting rid of that carbon tax. So we'll continue to advocate for the best case for Canadians, for the best policies for Canadians, to bring them forward and make sure that we check that unchecked government spending. We still haven't seen a budget. We know that these Liberals are spending more even than the last Prime Minister, who spent more than all Prime Ministers combined. I'm fairly confident that the Canadians will see our function as an important one in Parliament. And again, if Mark Carney wants to take our ideas, please go ahead, put forward Conservative ideas in this country, and really get down to fixing it.
We are seeing on social media, for example, today that Pierre Poilievre's wife, Anna Poilievre, today talked on, as I said, on social media about friendships coming and going and the ugly side of politics. Is that hinting at some kind of settling of scores? And do you think that rhetoric is helpful for your party moving forward in how Canadians see the Conservative Party?
Look, I think politics is not a linear path forward, and I think when you have setbacks or you don't get the result that you want, that you pick yourself back up and you get back on the saddle or back on the horse, and you do the job that you think that you should be doing in this country. And look, I think you'll have to ask Anna about what she means, but I can tell you that we're a united caucus, a bigger coalition, a new coalition, and a party that's united behind Pierre. And again, we're happy to have him back at the helm, doing what he does best in the House of Commons and holding the government's feet to the fire as one of the most effective opposition leaders in the history of this country.
I'm wondering, though, from what you're saying, were any lessons learned from the non-linear path that has gotten you to this point?
Yeah, look, absolutely. After every election, whether you win or you lose, I think internally you take stock of what worked, what didn't work, how to change it, how to grow the party base. But we're never going to take away from what Pierre has managed to build with a Conservative coalition, one that I'd never seen before, one where we have young people and new Canadians, unions and trades workers, families from coast to coast. We're not going to let down the 8 million Canadians that voted for Conservatives and for Conservative policies. And we've got to do both things. We've got to take stock of those lessons, discuss them internally as a party, and probably not the place to do it on Power and Politics, but I'll let you know.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, Melissa Lantsman. When MPs return to the House of Commons on September 15th, Poilievre will square off with Prime Minister Mark Carney in question period for the first time. Can Canadians expect those extended hands and non-partisan solutions to last as Parliament gets down to business? Let's talk about this with the Power Panel. Emily Nicolas is a columnist for Le Devoir. Michelle Cadario was Deputy Chief of Staff to former Prime Minister Paul Martin. And here with me is Kate Harrison, a Conservative political analyst. Welcome to you all.
Good to be here.
Kate first. Let's start with you. Pierre Poilievre says he's willing to work with the Liberals on non-partisan solutions. Is this a new era for the Conservative leader?
I still think the main responsibility of holding the government to account will be the chief concern of the opposition leader. It's in the name, but we already have seen a few signals that the Conservatives do want to try and work together on items that make sense for both parties. You saw them support C5, the National Infrastructure Bill, before the House recessed for the summer. And I think that's the type of thing that really does elicit cross-party consensus. There's a mutual interest in seeing energy infrastructure get built. Does that mean we have a kumbaya love-in from the fall onward? I doubt that very much, but I do think that we are in a moment where a lot of Canadians want to see constructive solutions. National infrastructure is one, and so I think we should take Mr. Poilievre at his word that he is equally interested in proposing some solutions that would benefit Canadians during this critical moment.
Okay, we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, I give it at least a few weeks.
Okay, at least. Michelle, I want to also ask you about the Liberal candidate in the by-election. Darcy Spady only hit 4.3%. He was behind the independent candidate, Bonnie Critchley, who had nearly 10%. And as we know, Poilievre won with more than 80%. Should Liberals read anything into that?
No, I don't think so. It was an off by-election. It was, kind of an expectation for sure that Pierre Poilievre was going to win it. That is never, it might surprise you, it's never been a target riding for the Liberal Party, and I doubt in my lifetime it ever will be. But and I think that there's, when you're having a second chance election, there was kind of probably an understanding of a lot of Canadians that he was going to be given his seat back in another seat in the House of Commons, and he ran in probably the safest place in the country, and he was awarded with that win.
And Emily, how does this election position, or this by-election position, Poilievre for his leadership review early next year in January? Did the numbers matter in terms of how much support he got?
It does. I also think that there's some other people internally who are not necessarily taking the fall fully, but being shifted around to allow Conservatives who are disappointed with the last election results to have someone else to direct that disappointment at. I'm thinking, for example, of Jenny Byrne, who is running the national campaign. That also helps. In terms of the fall, I think that the one metric I'm going to be looking at for actually the entire year is just how many bills are being adopted, and if the parliament is actually working. It's not something that we can just feel in the vibes and the attitude, but actually something that we can measure. And the parliaments in the last couple of years have been very, very dysfunctional in terms of just getting legislation forward, and we can see whether or not there will be improvement for this in the fall, as well as just looking at the tone of people. I think if we get things ahead, Canadians will feel a difference. There's a lot of different issues that are not necessarily partisan in nature that needs to be addressed. AI, for example, is something that there's a lot of people across different aspects of the political spectrum want to see a lot of legislation on. And so there's a lot of things like this that really demand a parliament to be able to actually function. And as well, in terms of just general tone and attitude, I think that this week the official opposition was QP. And the Air Canada Union. But I think we also need to understand that with the NDP as weak as it is, well, you're likely to also see players outside of Parliament to play more of a role of a challenge to Mark Carney that you had when you had that diversity of voices in Canada presented at Parliament itself.
Well, that's interesting. So Emily mentioned tone, and I want to ask a question about that, but also wrap it into a question about, for example, Air Canada. Yeah. The Conservatives did put out a reminder that they have this legislation about unpaid work, wondering if that would have had more profile if Pierre Poilievre was already the leader of the official opposition. But also, she did mention tone. They're going to square off in the fall for the first time. As collaborative as they might be behind the scenes on getting bills done, do you expect to see a change in tone from what we saw when he squared off against Trudeau? Yeah, it's a good question. I think that there is a movement around organized labor and trying to court support from labor that has been happening for some number of years now on the Conservative side of the fence. I think, the NDP is not as present on these issues, obviously, as they were prior to the campaign. And I think that is a bigger challenge for their party in terms of reconciling where they sit on these things. And I think that the Conservatives have stepped into a space there where they can draw some credible contrast with the Prime Minister on labor issues. And I think this week is a really good example of that. I do think that contrast is the key word here. And there is a lot of contrast between Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Carney. I think Mr. Carney has had a considerably long honeymoon, but we still find ourselves in the fall, without a trade deal, without much more to say on housing, without any of those national infrastructure projects. So I think Canadians want to see solutions come forward and see that kind of proactive approach on the part of the opposition and all parliamentarians. But at the end of the day, the opposition's job is to hold the government to account. And I think this past summer gives the Conservatives quite a bit of material to work with in terms of the Liberals not having yet lived up to many of their campaign promises. Michelle, in terms of if there is sort of this common ground on some things, whether we're talking about getting infrastructure built or even, new immigration targets, bail reform, before Conservatives had the access to a lot of wedge issues that they could use against Trudeau. If there's more common ground, is it going to be more difficult for them to find those wedge issues? Do they just wait out Carney and the honeymoon period for when that honeymoon period ends? What do you think?
Well, I think that it actually goes beyond a traditional honeymoon period this time. It's because Canada is in a state of crisis, right? Like we have been in this state of uncertainty, in huge economic turmoil since Donald Trump came in with his new tariffs not long after he was sworn in just in January. And so I actually think that it's because that we are in state, there's so much chaos that in uncertainty, that the expectation of Canadians is just different. It is about kind of, pulling up our socks and working together. And I think that, that's what Poilievre 2.0 is probably going to, reface himself in terms of how he presents himself in Parliament. I think that I think the government's going to be different because it's going to be welcoming that. Right, and so I think that cooperative spirit is less to do with the honeymoon and much more to do with actually meeting Canadians' expectations. This isn't a time where constant political bickering and kind of nastiness works, or holding up the Parliament and and it's both sides. I'm fully acknowledging that it was both sides prior to the last election. But I don't think that flies anymore. And so we'll have to see how it goes as we go forward.
I think we've just lost our Michelle here briefly. Hopefully we can get her reconnected. Emily, in terms of the actual by-election, it was this long-form ballot movement with more than, I think it was 214 people's name, more than 100 independents. Most couldn't even vote for themselves because they don't live in the riding. So, more than 100 got 0 votes. Is this the end of that movement, do you think?
I don't think there's going to be an end to people trying to have electoral reform in this country as long as there is not going to be electoral reform.
But is that the form it will keep taking, do you think?
I think it has evolved already in a sense that for the election in Carterton, you had the longest ballot ever. Now, this time around, Election Canada found a different way to deal with it. And so already it's evolving in terms of Election Canada's response to this form of civilian I guess right to express what they feel about just the electoral process itself, as well as about specific candidates and ideologies. And so I think this is what's going on, and that Election Canada is likely to keep on working on how they respond to it. I don't think that the movement is going to go away. It's something that we've seen for generations in different shapes or form. And so there's a lot of people who want to put their names on the ballots because they think that the thing itself is absurd, and so they're going to be doing it for absurd reason, and they're going to call it that, a political party, and that is a way to make a point. As long as there is no way to vote blank in Canada, there's going to be people coming up with funky ways of allowing people to actually do that. I don't expect that to stop. And you know what? I think that's part of what democracy is for. And that's also part of what Election Canada is supposed to figure out. And I think they've done this well this time around.
Now, Michelle, Emily already talked about sort of what she's looking for, at least from Pierre Poilievre this fall in the House of Commons. September 15th is really not that far away. What are you looking for when the House comes back?
Well, I am very much looking to see which Pierre Poilievre shows up. Is it really the version 2.0, a much less name calling, less nastiness, and actually with a true spirit of collaboration? Is Mark Carney going to continue with, the demeanor and the tone that he set in the first kind of few weeks of Parliament, or is he going to kind of give in to and become much more political and partisan as we kind of go forward?
Okay, a little visual technical problem. Kate, what are you looking for in the House beyond whether we see a 2.0 Pierre Poilievre?
Yeah, I think you had mentioned earlier wedge issues, and I think there are wedge issues there for the opposition to seize. Highlighting some of what Mr. Carney promised during the campaign that has not come to fruition, is some of that. I think there's wedge issues to be found on housing. I think there's wedge issues to be found around crime and immigration. A lot of these areas that Canadians have highlighted as being points of concern that Conservatives have proposals to, and that the current government is not acting on. So I think that, while the tone right now, or the focus right now, is on a lot of those international issues and the trade dispute, I think that the farther we go without an agreement, and the more people's affordability crisis comes into clear focus, the Conservatives and the Liberals are going to have a pretty robust exchange about who's got the right plan for people, and I think the Conservatives are going to provide that contrast with PR back in the House.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time left. Emily, maybe in 30 seconds to a minute, not what you're looking for from Pierre Poilievre. Everyone keeps talking about that, but this will be also the first time, really, other than in debate nights during the election, that Mark Carney squares off against him. What are you looking for?
I'm looking forward to see Mark Carney evolve in the midterm. In the long term, the man is still relatively new to politics. His job has been very much focused on the executive side of things so far. He hasn't been as talkative or expressive as some other prime ministers. He's just keeping his answers short, which is coming from a bureaucratic background. But the theatrics of political question period can grow on people. And so I'll see if his personality actually evolves over the last couple of months, and what Canadians actually make of that.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your perspectives. Emily Nicolas, Michelle Caderio, and Kate Harrison.